The vaulted chamber of the Galactic Council shimmered with crystalline light, its walls alive with shifting holograms that reflected the grandeur of 1,000 civilizations. Voices overlapped in a storm of derision, echoing through the hall as if mocking the silence of an absent guest. At the heart of the chamber, Chancellor Vurok of the Threx pounded a clawed hand against the obsidian dais, his ridged brow furrowing. "Humans," he growled, letting the word drip with disdain. "They retreat like frightened cubs. No message, no envoy, not even the courtesy of farewell. They vanish and leave their chair empty, as though the council were unworthy of acknowledgement." His reptilian eyes gleamed with satisfaction, inviting the laughter of allies who had long envied humanity's unpredictable rise. Beside him, Minister Ayler of the Very adjusted the metallic bands around his elongated skull, his voice thin and precise. "Their absence only confirms what many of us knew. Humanity was never fitted for diplomacy. They are brutes masquerading as thinkers, soldiers pretending to be statesmen." He paused, savoring his own words as the chamber rumbled with approval. "Their silence is not mystery. It is surrender." Admiral Cross of the Dorith, broad-shouldered and armored in ceremonial plates, leaned forward with a sneer. "I fought against them once. Their ships strike without elegance, their tactics lack refinement. They survive by chance and fury. Now that chance has run dry. Let us divide what remains of their holdings, their colonies, their mines. Why leave their spoils to rust in the dark?" The suggestion lit the chamber like oil on fire. Holographic projections of human-claimed star systems flickered into the air, red lines tracing routes of occupation. The Council's hunger for expansion, long checked by humanity's stubborn resilience, found fresh appetite in the void of their absence. And yet, amidst the chorus of triumph, a quieter voice rose from the side tiers. Scholar Dravan, a gaunt historian draped in simple robes, lifted his head. His eyes, old and weary, flicked from one proud leader to the next. "You speak too quickly," he said, his tone carrying more weight than volume. "Humanity does not vanish. They pause. They wait. When they are silent, it is not because they yield, it is because they prepare." Laughter drowned him. Vurok bared his fangs in derision. "Prepare? For what? They are dust scattered on forgotten worlds. Let them wait in their graves while we inherit their stars." But Dravan did not flinch. He had studied the wars of soul, the ferocity with which humanity had defended its cradle and the swiftness with which it adapted after every defeat. He had read the testimonies of commanders who swore that humans fought as though every battle were their last. He knew, as the others refused to admit, that silence could be more dangerous than open threat. Still, his warnings dissolved into mockery. The Council passed motions stripping humanity of its seat. Their insignia was erased from the chamber wall. Their silence was branded weakness, and their names spoken with contempt. Vurok raised his claw again, finalizing the decree with a hiss of satisfaction. "Let the galaxies see that the humans have left the stage. Their chapter closes here. We will not miss them." As the chamber filled with the thunder of alien voices celebrating their triumph, Dravan lowered his gaze to the floor. He alone noticed how the emptiness of the human chair seemed to watch them all, a shadow on the Council's victory. And though he said nothing further, a thought burned in his mind like a warning he knew none would heed. When men vanish without a word, it is not the end of their story. It is the beginning of yours. The Council cheered louder, blind to the weight of silence that pressed against the chamber walls, a silence not of defeat, but of reckoning yet to come. The chamber of the Galactic Council no longer carried the shadow of doubt. The decree against humanity had been sealed, and their erasure celebrated. From that moment, a steady tide of arrogance swept across the stars. Chancellor Vurok stood as its loudest herald, his speeches broadcast through every corridor of the Council's dominion. He declared humanity extinct in all but name, a civilization too primitive to endure among true galactic powers. His words spread like fire through the networks, repeated until even the youngest cadets laughed at the idea that humans had once been feared. Minister Ayler, ever precise and merciless, orchestrated the formal division of human-claimed space. Systems that had once flown the Terran flag were now carved apart by alien decrees, each new border etched with disdain. Colonies abandoned in silence were marked for occupation. Fleets surged outward under banners of conquest, their commanders smug in the belief that resistance was impossible. Aylar ensured that every decree carried an undertone of mockery, and he enjoyed watching entire star sectors renamed after council dignitaries, as though humanity's absence had been an invitation to erase its very memory. Admiral Kraz took the work to the battlefield. His fleets swept into human systems with ruthless efficiency, though what they found puzzled him. Entire planets lay deserted, cities silent, orbital stations still powered yet eerily vacant, shipyards intact but stripped of ships. He strode through the cold corridors of abandoned stations, his armored boots ringing against metal that had not heard human steps in years. He told his men the emptiness was proof of cowardice, but the hollowness of his voice betrayed a flicker of unease. Reports filtered back to the council chambers. Soldiers spoke of faint signals, fragmented words in dead human tongues. Exploration teams swore they glimpsed movement in sealed habitats only to find nothing when the doors opened. Pilots whispered of sensor echoes, fleets that appeared for a heartbeat, then vanished into the void. Vurok dismissed these accounts as nerves. Aylar scorned them as superstition. Kraz silenced them with orders and punishment. And yet the stories grew. A captain returned from the ruins of Mars with his eyes haunted, claiming the very soil whispered in static when scanned. Another officer vanished during a patrol, his distress beacon transmitting only a single human phrase before dissolving into noise. Each mystery was locked away in classified archives, never acknowledged in public debate, for to admit fear was to admit the council's arrogance might be misplaced. Despite the whispers, the insults continued. In a grand assembly, Vurok stood before a galaxy-wide broadcast, his scaled visage immense above every world. "Humanity is gone," he proclaimed, his voice swelling with theatrical pride. Their culture was crude, their science inferior, their art laughable. They were a fleeting species, loud but brief, and the council has endured beyond them as it always will. The audience roared with approval, yet Dravan, seated in the shadows of the assembly, felt a chill creep down his spine. He watched the holographic banners of human worlds flicker and dissolve into council emblems, and he knew the celebration was built upon a lie. He whispered to himself words none would hear. They are not gone. They are watching. Kraz, though, found no celebration in his victories. On the bridge of his flagship, he stared at a viewport displaying the blackness of space, where Earth had once pulsed with defiant transmissions. Now it was silent, a tomb with no markers. His officers waited for orders, but he hesitated. For all his bravado in the council, the admiral felt a pressure in the silence, as if the humans themselves were still there, unseen but not absent. He clenched his fists and barked commands to maintain discipline, unwilling to give voice to doubt. Weeks passed, then months. The council expanded deeper into abandoned human space, confident the spoils were theirs by right. Yet the deeper they reached, the stranger the reports became. Ships went missing without distress calls. Automated beacons replayed corrupted human messages. Derelicts returned, floating lifeless into patrol routes, their logs scrubbed clean. No enemy could be seen, no battle recorded, yet destruction whispered along the borders like a tide creeping closer. Still, the council scoffed. To Vurok, the anomalies were exaggerations from incompetent officers. To Aylar, they were logistical errors wrapped in superstition. To Kraz, they were irritations he drowned in orders and threats. Only Dravan, silent in his scholar's corner, understood that silence is not void, it is signal. And then, during a convocation meant to commemorate the full integration of human space, the first undeniable sign appeared. Midway through Vurok's speech, as he raised his claw to thunder against humanity's memory, every display in the chamber faltered. The holograms flickered, the sound died, and a single phrase, spoken in a human voice, calm and unyielding, filled the air. "We heard you." The words lingered, cold as iron, before vanishing into static. The chamber remained suspended in silence. Leaders stared at one another, unease tightening their throats, but none dared to speak of fear. Instead, they wrapped themselves again in arrogance, convincing themselves the signal was a trick. Yet beneath the surface of bravado, a crack had formed. Draven felt his heart pound as he recognized the inevitability. The humans had not vanished. They had listened. And now, the galaxy had given them reason to return. You said. The three words haunted every corridor of power. We heard you. They echoed in the minds of admirals, ministers, and chancellors, gnawing at confidence that once brimmed with arrogance. Chancellor Vurok stood before the council chamber days later, his scales dulled by restless nights, and declared the transmission nothing more than sabotage by a rival faction. His voice thundered as always, but it lacked conviction, and the murmurs in the audience betrayed how little he convinced even himself. Minister Ayler worked furiously to craft explanations, publishing decrees that branded the voice of fabrication of discontented worlds, a tactic to disrupt council order. He produced data analyses, algorithms, and falsified reports that proved the signal carried no authentic human markers. Yet in private, his long fingers trembled as he reviewed raw files. The cadence, the inflection, the quiet certainty, none of it could be forged. It was human, undeniably so. Admiral Kraz no longer dismissed unease with threats. His fleets had begun vanishing. Entire squadrons dispatched into human space failed to return, their last recorded positions swallowed by silence. When fragments did drift back, they carried no survivors, no data cores, no trace of what had transpired. Battle damage was precise. Engines carved away, weapons reduced to slag, hulls intact as though dissected by surgeons. To Kraz's warrior mind, this was no act of desperation. It was methodical, deliberate, and terrifying. The council responded with greater deployments. Fleets massed along the borders of former human space, their presence more for reassurance than actual defense. Worlds that had cheered at humanity's erasure now whispered doubts, fearful of the quiet that seemed to grow heavier each passing week. Trade ships altered routes to avoid Terran systems, and smugglers refused to enter the shadows of abandoned colonies. Then came the second sign. On the anniversary of the decree stripping Earth of its seat, every council world received the same transmission at once. It arrived without warning, overriding secure channels and military frequencies alike. The image was simple, a starfield marked by human constellations, accompanied by a voice, male, steady, devoid of emotion. You divided what was not yours. Nothing followed. No demand, no declaration, only the weight of judgment. Vurok called for calm, his booming speeches more desperate than defiant. He urged the council to stand united, to prove strength through solidarity. Yet as he spoke, reports arrived of more fleets gone missing. Outposts at the edge of human space sent final bursts of static before their signals were extinguished. Each day tightened the noose of dread, though no enemy ships were seen. Admiral Kraz pressed for open war. He demanded the council authorize a strike deep into human territory to draw the enemy into visible combat. Cowards hide in shadows, he roared, his fists striking the council table. If they're men, we will force them to fight as men. If they're ghosts, then we will scatter them with fire. But even as he spoke, he wondered if his words were bluster against the creeping realization that humanity had outgrown the council's understanding of war. Ayler, in contrast, counseled restraint. He argued that confrontation would only lend legitimacy to the threat. To him, the humans were staging illusions to frighten the galaxy into submission. We must deny them recognition, he insisted, though in the quiet of his quarters he replayed the recordings again and again, each repetition eroding his certainty. Only Dravan's voice remained unchanged. He had no seat of command, no authority to dictate fleets or policies, yet his words began to spread in whispers. The silence is their weapon. Every insult you hurled has become their blade. You mistook absence for defeat, but it was patience. And patience is the most dangerous strength of all. As months stretched on, the conflict sharpened not in open battle, but in attrition of fear. Council patrols ventured less often into former human systems. Colonies demanded greater protection, draining fleets away from the front. Trade convoys dwindled, economies staggered, and for the first time in centuries, the Council felt fragile. The turning point arrived without fanfare. During a grand convocation, as Council leaders argued over how to respond to the growing crisis, the chamber's vast ceiling shimmered. A fleet materialized in holographic display, not projections, but real-time transmissions forced into every Council network. Human ships, hundreds of them, hung in formation around a dying star. Their design was unrecognizable from the crude vessels once mocked by alien commanders. Sleek, angular, black as void, they radiated a menace born not of ornament, but of efficiency. The chamber fell silent. Not even Vurok's booming voice rose to meet the sight. Every leader stared at the impossible fleet, each vessel marked with no flag, no insignia, only silence. A single transmission accompanied the vision. You celebrated our absence. You mocked our name. Now you will learn the cost of contempt. And then the images vanished, leaving the Council shivering in the echo of words that no decree could erase. For the first time since humanity's disappearance, none dared speak. Not Vurok, not Aylar, not even Kraz. Only Draven exhaled the breath he had held, whispering to himself words the others refused to hear. The reckoning has begun. You said. The Council chamber was no longer a place of triumph. Its vaulted ceilings and crystalline walls, once radiant with holograms of expansion, now flickered with half-functioning displays. Delegates sat in silence, their faces carved with dread as reports poured in. Fleets gone, colonies abandoned, communications severed. The great powers that had mocked humanity now spoke in whispers, as if sound itself might draw the wrath that stalked them. Chancellor Vurok stood at the dais, but his voice carried none of its former thunder. His scaled hands gripped the edge of the podium, claws scraping grooves into the obsidian. We must rally what strength remains, he declared, but the hollowness in his tone betrayed him. Our fleets are scattered, yes, but our unity will endure. Humanity cannot fight us all. His words floated without conviction, falling dead before they reached the chamber floor. Minister Aylar's eyes were shadowed by sleepless nights, the gleam of calculation dulled by fear. He raised his thin hands, voice quivering despite practiced precision. Unity? Our empires no longer trust one another. Trade has collapsed. Armies refuse to leave their own borders. The very fabric of the Council is unraveling, Chancellor. Humanity has not merely attacked us, they have dismantled the order we built. His words cracked like brittle glass, and no one dared refute them. Admiral Kraz rose in a clatter of armor, his voice still carrying the weight of command though it quivered with desperation. Then let us strike what remains of their worlds. Gather every vessel, every weapon, and burn their systems until nothing but ash remains. If they will not face us, we will drag them into open battle. His fury, once a force that rallied men, now sounded like the growl of a cornered beast. Before any reply could come, the chamber darkened. Every light dimmed, every hologram sputtered, and a shadow swallowed the crystalline walls. Outside, through the vast viewport above the chamber, thousands of shapes descended from the void. Human ships, black and silent, fell into formation around the Council world. No shields resisted them, no weapons fired, systems had already been disabled. The might of 1,000 civilizations, stripped away in an instant, lay exposed beneath the silent fleet. Gasps rippled through the chamber as the first transmission arrived. The voice was human, male, steady, and merciless. You believed our silence meant surrender. You divided our worlds, mocked our name, and spat upon our legacy. But silence is not weakness. It is judgment. The chamber froze. Vurok staggered back from the dais, his fangs bared in terror rather than defiance. Aylar lowered his gaze, ashamed, though shame could not shield him from the words. Kraz alone stood tall, His fists clenched as if he could challenge the stars themselves, but his silence betrayed his understanding. No weapon he commanded could halt what loomed above them. The fleet did not fire. Instead, beams of light lanced down into the skies above the Council's capital. Towers shuddered as weapons dissolved into slag, shipyards crumbled into dust, and defensive grids vanished in fireless bursts of disintegration. In less than an hour, the Council's arsenal, its proudest symbol of unity and dominance, was reduced to fragments. Not a single life was taken, yet every leader felt the humiliation more keenly than death. The voice returned, colder than before. "We leave you your council. You may govern what remains of your empires, but never again shall you govern us. The galaxy is no longer yours to command." Then the transmission ended, and the ships withdrew in perfect silence, slipping back into the void as if the entire armada had been a shadow cast across the stars. The Council world remained intact, but hollow, its power broken, its pride turned to ash. For a long time no one spoke. Vurok collapsed into his seat, scales dulled as if his very spirit had fled. Aylar buried his face in his hands, the weight of intellect crushed by the simplicity of truth. Humanity had risen beyond them. Kraw's eyes burned with fury, yet it was fury without purpose, a soldier stripped of battle. Only Dravan, seated among the lesser delegates, broke the silence. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber with the gravity of prophecy fulfilled. "You mocked their absence. You mistook their silence for surrender. Now you know it was neither. They did not leave us. They left us behind." No one answered him. The chamber remained steeped in silence, the same silence the humans had wielded as their most devastating weapon. And as the Council's leaders stared into the void where the fleet had vanished, each one understood what Dravan's words truly meant. Humanity had ascended beyond words, beyond negotiation, beyond the Council itself. The story of their return would spread, not because humans demanded it, but because fear would carry it across the stars. The lesson was written not in treaties or battles, but in humiliation, and every civilization knew it. Those who insulted humanity had paid the price. The chamber dimmed to silence once more, and in that silence lingered a truth that none dared speak aloud, that the age of the Council was over, and the age of humanity had only just begun.